I hope you all enjoyed those refreshments and had some thoughtful discussions. We will be continuing tonight with our last 3 talks, but please remember, no photography or video, and to give our speakers your full attention. Now, I'm sure we have many avid readers present, and our next speaker seeks to understand the intersection of feminism, womanhood, and the romance genre within literature, and to give us a peek into its implications. So please welcome our next speaker, Caitrin McNally.
Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins. Lolita. This opening packs so much romance, lust, and desire into such a short sentence. Now, what if I told you that this sentence describes the relationship between a 40-ish-year-old man and a 12-year-old little girl? I hope that would change how you feel about it. Lolita was written in 1954 by Vladimir Nabokov and describes the relationship between 37-year-old Humbert and, cannot emphasize this enough, 12-year-old Dolores Haines, whom he calls Lolita. This book describes the relationship from Humbert's perspective as he falls in love and kidnaps her, and they traverse the country in a romantic affair that will intrigue and disgust academics and readers for decades to come. I hope we can all agree that there is so much wrong with this book. I tried reading it for school, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't. The writing wasn't the problem, though. It had just romantic prose and this flowery language, and it just drew you in. But then, you remembered you were reading from the perspective of an actual pedophile, and it made you feel so gross and guilty and like you needed hand sanitizer for your eyes. It was so awful. But I had to provide a reason why I couldn't finish this book. And that's when I noticed all of the similarities between this highly problematic novel and all of the romance novels I used as palate cleansers. Enemies to lovers, forced proximity, and the one-bed trope are all utilized in this highly problematic novel, while also being staples of women in writing romance. What in society has allowed women to make millions off of romance novels that utilize the exact same tropes as this highly problematic novel? What has allowed women to use these tropes, which are historically used against women, and make them feminist staples? What I think is that there's many different factors, but 3 main ones are the community that these tropes create, their commentary on power, and most importantly, their discussion of the intersectionality of women's lives and purity culture. Starting with community. Community is what allows these tropes to thrive and grow. If you look at Book Talk, which is a community on TikTok of readers who write, recommend, and review romance novels, you'll see that they empower one another to embrace their sexuality. Here they point to the inherent nature of the books as what allow them to be feminist. They're written by women, for women, meaning that they cater exactly to what women of the time find attractive, endearing, or romantic, because they're written by women who share the exact same values. These tropes show how what women are deeming romantic is consistently changing. For example, one trope we have not discussed is enemies to lovers, and women are devouring it. It is me. I'm women. I love it so much. And I can tell by some faces here tonight that I might not be alone, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, enemies to lovers is when you have a very hot, yet morally dubious, vampire, werewolf, fairy, fae, god, alien, mafia leader, or son of a mafia leader who will really hate a woman and kidnap her. And after some sexually charged banter, and maybe one saving the life of the other, they will ultimately fall in love. I know this looks bad. I do. But what you have to realize is that deep down, way deep, underneath all the angst, this reveals something that women are finding more and more endearing and attractive. Stockholm Syndrome. No. Equality. You can have no sexually charged banter. You can have no mutual hate without first having a level of mutual respect. Lynn Neal, a professor of religion who specializes in Christian romance novels, states in the 1970s, romance novels tended to feature dominant and aggressive heroes, coupled with weak, subservient heroines. In more recent years, these relationships tend to be more egalitarian. I think what this shows is that women are finding equality and respect far more attractive than Fabio swooping in and saving your damsel self. I think these tropes are most exemplified when you have a story that takes inspiration from the myth of Hades and Persephone. This will look like a young ingenue who, when in the position of power, when meets a man in a position of power, will develop and embrace her power and sexuality. This will, of course, be way after some sexually charged banter, one saving the life of the other, and falling in love. But this reveals what women are finding so endearing about the character of Persephone. Persephone reveals a lot about the intersectionality of what women feel when growing up. Persephone, in the original myth, grows up under the name of Kor, which directly translates into maiden. She represents purity of childhood and womanhood, while in her time with Hades, she grows into Persephone. Yes, she is the goddess of spring, but she's also the goddess of reincarnation and ghosts and other really cool occulty stuff. But women find her so endearing because she represents women growing up in a society that forces them to be a Kor when they long to be Persephone. This fight for the embrace of sexuality is nothing new. In the 1970s and 1960s, the second wave of feminism dominated the theory. This was a time of so much revolution, and it encompassed so much more than just burning the bras. But during this time, women fought for the normalization of women's sexuality in a society that historically sought to oppress them. I believe that I am growing up in the manifestation of their dreams and their fight. I am privileged enough to grow up in a world where women make millions off of their romance novels. This allows them to escape unhealthy relationships or unsafe situations. I am privileged enough to grow up in a world where women are free to embrace their sexuality. And most importantly, I'm privileged enough to grow up in a world where Wattpad, Outlander, and Bridgerton are household names. In conclusion, there is nothing wrong with you for reading enemies to lovers, forced proximity, or the one bed trope, because all of these are manifestations of decades of feminist theory in the making. Women are authors and consumers, yes, but they're also active agents in writing the narrative of women in literature. This is a narrative where women are free to be a Persephone when they grow up in a society that forces them to be Kor. Women use romance novels to explore agency, lust, and desire, and fantasies of their own creation. But women also use these novels not only to empower their sexuality, but to continue writing the narrative of feminist theory. Thank you.